Hi, everyone. Today's episode is about caffeine in coffee and tea. I am so hyped up for this, and it's not because I drank a gallon of coffee today. I did not have caffeine since this morning, but I did just eat a whole bag of puffy peas, if you know what those are. This episode is a complete summary of what I learned from Michael Pollan's book, Caffeine: How Caffeine Created the Modern World. If you don't know, Michael Pollan is a famous author who usually explores the food industry. And recently he had a book before the caffeine book about psychedelics. And it's very informative, non-judgmental, unbiased, and he's willing to do experiments on himself. So this is his journey of understanding coffee, where it came from, the history, the science, and he quits it cold turkey and talks about the effects it has on his body, quitting and returning back to drinking coffee. So I read this book solely on Audible. It's an Audible original. You cannot get it on paper in print. And I did that with my Audible Plus membership, and it came with the Plus catalog, which includes tons of books without having to use your credits for choosing a book. And they also include other podcasts and whatnot. So this book was included in the Audible Plus membership. And I'm just saying that now because I have a lot of deals in the show notes here. So if you look at the notes, you could see a lot of Audible deals for different types of memberships, and also gifting those memberships if somebody's birthday or anniversary or Valentine's Day is coming up and you wanted to gift someone an Audible membership. Okay, so you know, caffeine is a drug. It's a very subtle drug compared to other drugs. And Michael Pollan explains that it alters your state in a psychoactive way. So please don't expect this episode to poo-poo on coffee. This is not about drinking less caffeine or less tea or coffee. We love coffee here. I have a whole blog about coffee and travel. My travel coffee blog is called brindlecoffee.com. Check it out if you want to learn about how to roast and grind your own beans and what makes the best, most delicious cup. Moving on. Okay, so from the book, first I learned caffeine improves a lot of things. It's proven to improve athletic performance, your memory. For example, if you learn something and then you drink coffee right after, it will help you remember that thing the next day. It improves confidence. It appears to be protective against cardiovascular disease, Parkinson's disease. Those are not 100% sure. It definitely improves concentration, and it has been doing that for hundreds of years. I do know some people who have ADHD and they are not on medication. And if they really need to focus and concentrate for a certain project, perhaps in their job, they might drink coffee that day, and it does help. Also, caffeine has antioxidants, and that's in, well, coffee. I guess I don't know if tea has antioxidants. It has to. It has to. Even decaf coffee has antioxidants. And they both have antimicrobial tannins. So they might have improved people's health back in the day when you were likely to die from things that we would no longer die from. That's all I know. I'm not a scientist. But even though these good things exist about coffee, caffeine can be bad. The excess is bad. If caffeine pushes off sleep and lack of sleep is deadly, you do the math. And that made me wonder about those gamers. You know, if they played video games for a couple days and then they died because they didn't sleep, your body needs to sleep, but the caffeine is a little bit not culpable, but the caffeine contributed to them dying because they didn't sleep for days. Anyways, without caffeine, you have better sleep. Go figure. Because the half-life and the quarter life of caffeine is very long. The quarter life of coffee is 12 hours. So if you drank a cup of coffee at noon, then it's a quarter of it is still in your body at midnight. And that's why it disrupts your sleep. It interrupts it. There are two types of coffee, Robusta. Yep. It's easy to grow. That's the strong, bitter, high caffeine, cheap. It's a cheap one. It makes instant coffee. Sometimes it's like Folgers is Robusta. And then there's Arabica, which is higher quality, and people started slow roasting it and it became really delicious. And then in the United States, Peet's, the brand Peet's, Mr. Pete. I'm laughing because sometimes my father's name is Pete and people call him Mr. Pete. Anyways, Peet's Coffee, Pete started importing Arabica beans and making a really high quality roast. And then he trained a bunch of people in Washington, and they became the coffee that we have today in the United States, including the people who started Starbucks. I learned all of this from Michael Pollan, yes. And I read the book, and I also heard a Fresh Air podcast interview where Terry Gross interviewed Michael Pollan, and he sort of summarized some of the chapters in his book. And the book is very short. It's about 2 hours long to listen to. So you could learn a little bit more, but I'm sort of giving a lot of it away. So spoiler alert. So the reason people feel that they need coffee in the morning is because they've already started to go through withdrawal at night. The way that the coffee cycle in your body matches up with the circadian rhythms of your body is wild. I mean, I don't know if it's just a coincidence, probably, but basically the coffee wears off, you go to sleep, and then you start to go through withdrawal. You wake up and you feel foggy, which are the effects of the withdrawal, and then you drink coffee and you suppress the symptoms of withdrawal. So when you drink coffee every morning, or tea every morning with caffeine, you're not really getting the boost that coffee can give to a person that coffee is new to. You're just suppressing the withdrawal symptoms, and that's why you feel better. Side note, I think that every mug, every sweatshirt, every meme about don't talk to me until I have my coffee in the morning is rude. It's as if you can't control yourself and how you treat people. Come on. So anyways, the coffee that you drink every day, it's not lifting you, even though it has that ability. It's not lifting you anymore because you're basically in a constant caffeinated state if you drink coffee or caffeinated tea every day. If you're new to coffee, then you get the drug happy reaction that we're talking about because you're not used to it. So if you really wanted to get that happy boost from caffeine, you would have to not drink it all the time and make it sort of a surprise. So drinking it every day, he called it a maintenance dose versus novelty. I'm going to go into some history of coffee. I found this so fascinating. It was really exciting, actually, to hear where it all came from and hear things that names of things you've heard of before. You'll understand in a minute, and understand where it came from all of a sudden. So first of all, coffee is extremely hard to harvest. And so I just have to say props to everyone who has been harvesting coffee for the last couple thousands of years, because it grows in a warmer climate on a steep hill. And nowadays people strap a basket to them and then they pick the red berries. And then, like, I can't remember the number. A lot of berries equal 1 cup of coffee. It's ridiculous. And it hurts. So anyways, those people deserve a lot of money. So back to the history. Okay. So history is tied to slavery in a lot of ways, including coffee history or tea history. I keep forgetting about tea. Sorry. I do love tea as well. The history of coffee starts back in time. Beginning in the year 1000 AD, tea is in Asia, right? A few hundred years later, coffee is buzzing there too. Caffeine helped religious folks do long spiritual practices by keeping them awake. Hindus in Yemen, Buddhists in China, they were using coffee to stay awake so they could meditate or pray. Muslims found coffee to be great because alcohol is not allowed. So, coffee being not mentioned in the Quran is allowed. So, it's a nice alternative for like a treat drink. So, then later, a Venetian traveled to China and saw coffee and tea being drank hot, like boiling. And that was so unknown. People didn't drink anything hot and boiling. But because of the diseases around, it was the safest thing to drink. They were more sanitary, even more sanitary than alcohol. Convenient for staying alive. Fast forward to the 1600s when a Dutch person smuggled an Arabica coffee plant out of Mocha, Yemen. What didn't white people steal? Am I right? This plant was cloned and eventually planted on a Dutch island, Java. Hence, Mocha Java. Who knew? Yes, I learned all of this from Michael Pollan's book. I'm almost done with history. So, some other Europeans stole the plants too. Then England, France, Italy, and the Netherlands all had coffee houses where people would gather and talk about their different interests and jobs. You could even go to a certain coffee house and hear about like the ships or the trade. Like if you had that business, you'd drink coffee at that place because all other, I don't know, sailors, traders were there talking about the different things that were coming into port. Cool, right? Well, this caused a problem for some monarchs. And they were thinking, oh, we got to close these coffee houses because people are plotting against us. And you know what's funny is that most of the time that wasn't happening, but with the French Revolution, it was. So they drank their coffee and they were like, let's storm the Bastille. Tea was cheaper than coffee, which made England drink more tea, which they're now known for. The English got their tea from China, and China didn't want anything back but money. I mean, England, I don't even know what they had to give China. Nothing. So they gave them silver, and China made a lot of money. And then England didn't like paying that much. They would rather trade something. And since England controlled India, they grew tea and opium in India and then sold, aka smuggled, opium to China, which addicted millions of Chinese people. Okay, moving forward a century or more to the Industrial Revolution, employers noticed their workers on coffee were more productive. And eventually, the employees got paid for their coffee breaks, but not at first. Also, around the Industrial Revolution, since people were working faster due to coffee or not, the minute hand got put on clocks. Can you imagine just having the hour hand and not needing anything else? Also, night shifts became possible. People didn't stay up at night before. There were like 3 shifts all of a sudden. Lastly, this brings me to the American Civil War. The Union soldiers were rationed coffee and the Confederate soldiers were not. What if anyone who flies the Confederate flag now had all caffeine taken away from them? That'll show them. Anyways, the Confederates lost. Can you believe it? That brings us to today, where 90% of human adults are on caffeine to your coffee. So Michael Pollan called this an unsupervised experiment. It's like for hundreds, for thousands of years, we've been experimenting on humans with caffeine and nobody's paying attention. Nobody's like conducting the study. So anyways, the way that coffee works, or caffeine, is that it blocks adenosine from being recognized. So adenosine is coursing through your blood and it's in your brain, and over the day it keeps getting stronger. There's more because it's telling you to go to sleep. It's called sleep pressure. So you get a little more foggy, you get a little more sleepy, and then you go to bed. But when you drink caffeine, the adenosine is blocked. It still exists, but the caffeine is in the way, and so you don't feel tired. So eventually your tiredness does catch up with you. And so if you drank coffee for hours upon hours, eventually you would still crash, which I think people have probably tried. Now, for me, when did I start drinking coffee all the time? let's see, I liked coffee growing up, and in high school, I would just take a sip from my dad, and he would say, "Oh, that's enough for 6 months or whatever," and I'd probably have some like 3 or 4 weeks later. And I wasn't drinking a whole cup ever. But then I guess maybe in 12th grade, we started being able to drive and we could meet up as friends with friends at Starbucks and I could figure out what fancy drink I wanted. So it was occasional, it was special. And I did that through college. I really only drank coffee if I had stayed up really late doing homework or something. And, or if it was, again, a treat going out and buying it somewhere. A couple of years after college, I started working at a production editing company. And that company shared a building with Keurig Green Mountain. And so I think that a lot of the coffee that our company got from Keurig was free. And I also think they bought in bulk. So we ended up having carafes in the break room where we could all just brew coffee whenever we wanted. There was always coffee going. And usually it was dark magic. So it was really, really strong. And I don't think Green Mountain coffee is that good, but it was free. So I drank it a lot. And then I continued to drink coffee probably every day ish for since then, which has to be like 5 or 6 years ago. And there have probably been some times where I didn't drink coffee every day, but I just didn't keep track. So now I do, and I know that I'm addicted to coffee in a way because we all are if we have it every day because we're going through withdrawal when we feel foggy or get a headache or something when we don't have it. And I do get the headache. Some people don't. So then Michael Pollan explains what it felt like to go back on coffee after his cold turkey quitting experience. Oh, by the way, it takes like a week or two to stop experiencing withdrawal. So then you could really start noticing how you sleep and how you wake up and you feel completely rested. So if you want to try it, you got to wait that long to feel the results. Okay, so he went back to drinking coffee and tea, and he said it was like a jolt. It was like cocaine, just that's what he said. And I can imagine that. And the same thing goes with sugar, which right now I'm at the very end of the 21-day sugar fast. If you wanted to listen to my episode about sugar addiction, it's episode 3 of Learning and Unlearning. And it sounds similar because when you go off of sugar, you have the withdrawal of headaches and brain fog, same idea. And your digestive system might react differently, like speed up or slow down. And then going back on the thing, you are now not desensitized to it and it feels or tastes so strong. It really reacts in your body. And that is exactly what's going to happen to me when I incorporate sugar back into my diet on Monday, February 1st. And I'm really interested in seeing what happens. I know I've done this before, so I'm probably going to feel the zing, like any little bit of sugar feels like a ton. And that's good because it'll prevent me from having too much. Coffee is safer than sugar. Let me wrap up this episode with science. Something cool about coffee plants are that they're bitter, and so they ward off insects. So an insect who wants to eat the leaves might not enjoy that, and then the plant can survive longer. And it's also sort of an herbicide to some plants who might want to grow next to the coffee plant. It kills them. And not all of them, but some of them. And so it's not crowded. It really wants to be alive. The amount of caffeine that it would give an insect or an insect might eat is not going to kill it. It's just a defense mechanism for the plant. So it does confuse insects. They do really weird things or they can't like move correctly. And so that would also deter them from eating it. Michael Pollan said that there was an experiment done on spiders with caffeine and they wove like cubic webs that didn't work. Like they were the wrong shape. The coffee plant is proven to improve your memory, right? You remember that? And it does the same for bees, but it just makes the bees remember the plant. So as soon as the bees pollinate on the plant, they get some caffeine. There's no proof that the bees are like caffeinated or hyperactive from the caffeine. It just causes them, and is proven that they remember to return to the plant. And the bees keep returning to the plant, even if there's nothing to pollinate. There's a lot of benefits for humans on caffeine, but there is a huge risk because of climate change. The temperature is changing of where people grow coffee, and so that sort of belt of weather is decreasing. The Arabica plants cannot survive anymore. So we could be in this, he says, something like a golden age of coffee. And we could end up having like half the amount of coffee available to the world by 2050. So if you like coffee, you got to do something. You could decrease your personal carbon footprint by cutting down meat consumption. You can also do it with the way you heat your house or your car, but mostly eating is the way that we can change our own carbon footprints. And I have a social account about vegetarianism, and I'm going to be making more videos on vegetarianism with advice and such on YouTube. And so my Instagram is smartveghead. Same thing on Facebook, smartveghead. And you could follow me there for vegetarian recipes if you don't know how to eat less meat in your diet right now, or to ask me questions about what you could eat that would still give you protein or a nutritious diet that you used to rely on meat for. So anyways, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed my summary of this book. I basically just read it for you. And I will see you next time. Much love, Sam.